go through that dialogue just to kind of give some context on what we'll be discussing today, or
Sure.
yourself.
So I have been I've been a master mason since August of 2008. I pretty much belong to pretty much almost every body in masonry. I'm past excellent high priest of Excelsior chapter number 44. Holy Royal Arch Mason, past thrice illustrious master, Hyman Biff Council number 3, Royal and Select Master, past eminent commander of Alpha Commandery number 1, Order of Knights Templar, a past commander in chief, Charlotte Consistory number 35, Valley of Charlotte, Orient of North Carolina. Also a member of the J.B. Henderson class of 2013, third degree class, United Supreme Council, Southern Jurisdiction, where the Honorable Dr. Corey Hawkins serves as our Sovereign Grand Commander. Also a member of Ramesses Temple number 51, Oasis of Charlotte Desert, North Carolina, where I currently serve as a high priest and prophet, and a host of others. I think I'll stop there. I also have the honor and pleasure of serving as the worshipful grand orator for my jurisdiction for my Grand Lodge. I have since 2016. I've had the pleasure of authoring 13 Masonic books for the Teachable Moments series, which is for series of 4 books for symbolic masonry. I have 4 books for the Yorkite, 2 for Royal Arch under Living Arch 1 and 2, 1 for Royal and Select within the Secret Vault, and 1 for Knights Templar by Way of the Cross, 2 for the Scottish Rite Mount with Wings 1 and 2. Mount with Wings 2 actually has a 32nd and 33rd degree edition, and Keys to Leadership 1 and 2 are books to help with those who are pursuing leadership, those who are in leadership, and those who have passed the chair. So been pretty busy. My joy, my love is lecturing, teaching, presenting, speaking when I can. That is pretty much my niche. I consider myself more of a ritualist. Some say that I'm a historian. I really haven't stepped into that realm. I have a little bit, but my colleagues, and also I've been a panelist on the monthly podcast, the Prince Hall Think Tank, since 2019. Shout out to my brothers of the think tank, past Master Caffey, Morgan, and Gillarm. Those are the true historians. I'm just riding along in the bandwagon. So that's just a small bit about me, and so far what I've done in my Masonic career.
All right, good afternoon. We actually didn't go live. I just hit record, so not a big deal. We'll still stream live at some point. Actually, they're streaming. So good afternoon, everybody. We just want to thank everybody for coming out on the Sunday. We especially want to thank our guests. I'm Brother Randall. This is Brother Trey. Trestleboard Talk continues. Today, our guest is Damien Jack. But before we get to Mr. Jack and have him introduce himself, we just want to give a disclaimer. Every view and every opinion discussed on this show will be just that of ours, of Trey's and myself. We are not in any way, shape, or form saying anything that is coming from our Grand Lodge, nor our lodge is our worship master. So, having said that, we're going to get this started right away. Brother Jack, sir, the floor is yours. Just for your
Uh,
introduction.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Brother Damien Jack, a proud past master of Paul Drayton Lodge number 7 here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where worshipful Brother Sidney Thomas serves as our worshipful master. Our lodge is a constituent lodge under the auspices of the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of North Carolina, where the Honorable Daniel L. D.T. Thompson serves as our 24th most worshipful Grand Master. It's an honor and pleasure to be before you this afternoon, this evening. Looking forward to a great conversation. And as a disclaimer has been given, the views and opinions do not reflect my Grand Lodge, and other bodies of masonry that I belong to within my jurisdiction as well. These are my opinions and my opinions alone.
All right. Let's get into it, brother Jack. We just want you to kind of you gave your disclaimer. Just give a little bit about your background, your history. It's funny. We was at our Grand Lodge yesterday, and we were doing our Grand Lectures and Grand Master's official visit. And I had mentioned you, and I said, well, who knows Damien Jack? Quite a few people actually raised their hand, but a lot of them didn't know about the books and the things that you've done. So can you kind of just all right? No doubt, man. Obviously, it's a mouthful, but let me ask you this: is the think tank still going?
Yes.
It's
The
still going. Okay.
fourth Sunday of every month. Actually, our next Our next episode will be next Sunday, January 26th, 8:30
Perfect.
p.m. And actually, this will be the OES takeover. Every
Okay.
year, we allow the sisters of the Order of the Eastern Star to do a show, and this will be the takeover. This year we are in our 10th season, so we are truly enjoying what God has put before us. So yeah, so tune in next Sunday on YouTube 8:30 for the next episode of the Prince Hall Think Tank.
Got you. I'll subscribe, man, and definitely want to get your brothers to subscribe to our channel as well. I remember you had our past Grandmaster on there, and oddly enough, you mentioned us because of the book. So we really appreciate that. Charles and I definitely wanted to convey those sentiments. But just
Absolutely.
kind of want to jump into this dialogue real quick. And before I do that, definitely give you um, some props on your new position with the ICE department for the ancient Egyptian Arabic order, the Noble Mystic Scribes, North and South America.
Oh well, actually it's an old position.
Oh
I
yeah, just
actually I served as a volunteer for the ICE department from 2017 to 2020. I was blessed to have participated in the contributed in the new edition of the Imperial Lectures, which is out now.
yeah,
I
tough.
have been appointed by my Imperial Deputy of the Desert as the Desert Lecturer here for the desert
Good.
for Carolina. So I'm looking forward to doing big things here with the desert. So, like I said, just just staying busy and doing what I love.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I mean, obviously you do. So let's just jump
Eh,
into
Hold on
what we're talking about today. Go ahead, Trey.
one second. Just real quick, Brother Jack, before we get too deep into it, because I'm interested and I'm pretty sure some of our viewers would be interested. Hey, where can we pick up your books?
So my books are I have some books that are available on Amazon and some books that are available through another company called Book Patch. But anybody who is interested in purchasing books, I do a package deal and I do have sales now and again. So anyone who is interested can actually email me at masonic1906 at gmail.com. That's masonic1906 at gmail.com, and I can give you the price list and instructions on how to order.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
So as we were talking about those books, it's a great segue. And Under the Living Arch, as I was kind of going back through preparing for the day and rereading it. One of the things that I talked about yesterday, especially from a grand lecture perspective, is at the etymology of words. And I know that you're huge on that, and I've heard some of your lectures and kind of been there firsthand, had a front row seat. But specifically in the induction, it says what induced you to become a master mason. Since becoming a master mason, this is a question. Have you heard that you've heard at the opening and closing of every symbolic lodge? And then you go on to talk about the word induced. And induced obviously meaning to succeed in pursuing or influencing someone. You want to kind of just discuss that as we're talking about the etymology of words and as we just we're in this weird space of parrot masons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's funny you talk about parrot masons. I have a lecture that I've done that's actually in one of the books as well called "Watch the Masons," and it's derived off of a classic sermon called "Watch Them Dogs." And what the sermon is about is the pastor, Reverend B.W. Smith. He takes about 10 or 11 different dogs and he gives the characteristics of each dog and he compares them to the people in the church, right? And watch out for how people in the church act. So I did a lecture called "Watch the Masons," and one of them that I used is parrot masons. And so I used the analogy of the movie Harlem Nights and the scene in Red Fox House where he had the parrot in the background and he's saying a particular phrase in the background, and so it's one of those things where we have a tendency to recite information without understanding the information, right? It's one thing to know something, but can you actually talk about what it is that you know? Do you have a true understanding of what it is that you know? I'm a big advocate of Proverbs 4:7, where it says, "Wisdom is the principal thing, so get wisdom, and in all thy getting, get understanding." Right? So we have a tendency to go through certain things as a routine. The question asks, what induced you, what influenced you, what guided you into, taking this trip. So how is it that you're reciting things, and you're reciting these words, and not having an understanding of what these words mean? Can you break it down to the smallest molecule and say, this is what this means, or are you just a parrot and just repeating what you've studied and read without giving credence to the actual meaning? Because these words that are put together, they're not, they weren't put together, by mistake. There are reasons why they, were put together. So when you break down the etymology of it, when you look at the definition of it, and one thing that I like to explain to, the people that, every word in the dictionary has multiple definitions. Unfortunately, because, society has a tendency of hearing one word and only using that one definition. For example, you see a lot in masonry, we use the word perfect, right? So, when we see the word perfect, automatically we think without flaws, no blemishes. This person has no errors. But there's other definitions when it comes to the word, perfect, because everyone likes to say, nobody's perfect. There's only been one perfect person to walk this earth. We will never be perfect. We will never attain perfection. Well, if that's the case, then why do we have perfect, the word perfect within our rituals? Well, what is a definition of perfect? Why do you tell someone to perfect, their craft? So when you look at another definition of perfect, it's basically, to do the very best that you can. Doesn't mean that it will be without blemish, but you can perfect it to the point where you have done the very best. So when you take the time to not only break down what the word means, but look at multiple definitions and find out which definition fits for the context that is being used, then you can have a better understanding of what it is you're studying.
I mean, those are all valid points, and there's a point in our ritual, especially in our burials, says perfection on this earth is not yet obtained. The wisest as well as best of men have gone astray. Suffer then the apologies of human nature to plead for those who can no longer plead for themselves. So that's kind of to your point of people striving for that perfection. And then again, that does beg a question: why do we have the word perfect? And then what does that mean for a master mason? So Trey, do you have anything right now? Because there's a couple other things I want to dive into, but I'll give
No,
you the
that
opportunity.
no, nothing to add to that. And more of a question, since we did go over the charge, but what induced you to become a master mason? What induced you, Brother Jack?
Ooh,
I
well,
know it's a loaded question.
no, not really, not really. So, I actually used to be embarrassed to say this, but as I've gotten more mature, I've learned to understand that people learn about masonry in different ways, right? So, the first time I ever seen anything in regards to masonry was when I was about 18 years old, and I watched the movie Rosewood. And if you remember the movie Rosewood, you remember when they was having a meeting within a Masonic Lodge, and there was a point where the one gentleman asked the other, "Are you a traveling man?" And he showed his emblem. And so that was the first time I was ever introduced to Freemasonry by watching the movie. And then I went off to college, and found out that my mentor was a Mason. I went and I joined a historically Black Greek letter organization, and found out one of the founders, who we term as Jules, one of the Jules, was a Mason. So it just kept coming up. It just everything that I was doing, Masonry was coming up in some form or fashion. So in 2002, I started working in juvenile detention, and I met a brother who had some light on his hand. He had an emblem on his hand, and I made the terrible mistake of touching his emblem.
Mm.
And I asked him, what can you tell me about that? And he very politely nudged my hand out the way and, asked the question, didn't anybody ever teach you not to touch my light? So from there I was, hooked. I would ask him questions, question after question. A shout out to my brother and friend, Past Master Michael Cooley. And so I had the opportunity to do it when I was in Pennsylvania, but at the time I was getting ready to get married and move down here to Charlotte.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the opportunity to do it. And so when I got here, of course, I got acclimated with the barber. I've been going to him for a year, and then 2007 was when Imperial Session was here in Charlotte. And of course, me not knowing anything about that, about, shrine or anything like that. So the day that I go get my hair cut, they're talking about the session being in Uptown Charlotte. The barber was talking about, well, I'm not a noble, but I'm a brother. So I went down there and talked to people, and, I almost messed up my haircut, as fast as I turned my head around. Cause I'm like, you a Mason? So I've been coming to you for a whole year and had no idea, trying to find somewhere to go and stuff like that. So, we started talking about it and everything. And, he asked me, he said, do you, are you trying to be one? I said, yeah, but I can't, I can't find nobody. Next thing you know, he turns around, goes into the drawer, pulls out an application, and the rest is history. So April 21st, 2008 is when when I became an EA, and August of 2008 was when I was raised.
Man, that's awesome. It's one of those things. I had a similar story, although recently, within the last couple of years, raised like similar journey in the sense of I was interested, didn't know how, moved away, came back, was re-engaging with some folks, and it wasn't until, just by happenstance again that ran into a brother who was able to introduce me to the craft. So it's interesting to me that it's not by happenstance. And I got a really unique story, but I'll save that for some other time with some brothers that I went through my cables and whatnot. But I find it really interesting how Masonry just seems to find those who are looking for it to some point, right? But yeah,
Absolutely.
So you said 2008. That's funny. So we've been in Masonry around the same time because I was raised in March of 2007.
Okay.
Just a little bit before you. I thought you had been traveling longer than that. Not the time isn't, time is irrelevant when you love what you do.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
as we talk about that, I got a question. So, and I'm sure brothers want to hear this. So if a brother comes to you and asks you, well, what does it mean to take good men and make them better men? How would you respond to that?
Take a drink on that.
That's yeah. That's
yeah.
that's
Here we
the
go.
abyss.
Here
Yeah,
we go.
that is the abyss.
So I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to give to what may be an unpopular opinion to some. I'm not a fan of that phrase. And the reason why I'm not a fan of that phrase is because I firmly believe it's not necessarily we take good men and make them better. A good man has to want to make himself better. He has to want to be made better, right? So it's, we give them the tools to help themselves make themselves better, right? At the end of the day, Freemasonry is about self-improvement, right? So how can I make you better? If we talk about this is about self, if we've come to improve ourselves in masonry, then I can't make you do anything. You have to want to do it yourself. It's just like the old phrase of leading a horse to water, right? So masonry gives you the principles, the lessons, and the tools for you to make yourself better. But I can't make you better. I can't make you do anything that you don't want to do. Anything that you have done, you have come on your own free will and accord, right? So if you've done that, then hopefully you've come with the idea of wanting to be made better, and hopefully it has been properly advertised to you that this is what masonry is about, for you to improve yourself, to give you the tools to improve yourself so that you can show others by your actions how they can improve themselves. So I'm not as I've studied, and I will say in my period of, being not naive, I would say that would be the marketing tool. But as I've studied more and become just a tad bit wiser, I've strayed away from that, from that phrase. And if anybody was to ask, how do you make good men better? I said, I can't do it. I could show you the tools. We give you the tools, but you have to do it yourself. A good brother of mine out of the jurisdiction of Arkansas, past Master Stephen Witherspoon, he once said, it's funny
Okay.
how we give you how masonry gives you the tools, but they don't give you the instructions, because everybody is going to use, they're going to tell you what the tool is used for, but they're not going to tell you how to use it, because everybody's going to use the tool in different ways, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of them things. Like, there's no cookie cutter way for you to apply the lessons and principles of Freemasonry to your life. So, if you want to be made better, we can give you the tools to make yourself better, but we can't do it. You have to do it for yourself.
No, I mean, and I guess honestly, it would be just knowing your why, right? What's
Hmm.
your why? Because your
Absolutely.
why is different than my why, than different than Trey's why. And as
Yeah.
we say that, and I've never been really a big fan of that phrase, but we continuously use it over and over and over again. I always ask brothers, well, how? Like,
Right.
how do you do it? I mean, just like you talk about the working tools, and I'm familiar with Steve. Steve actually did a lecture for us on our other series last month on the I think it was a super excellent master.
Yeah.
So funny though, it's like, well, okay, these working tools, explain the working tools to me. Like, if we really want to be technical, should we be utilizing those working tools to better fit, our edifice, to make us better and to shine without saying it? Because I think more Masons are inclined to say that they're a Mason than to just show that they're a Mason. Would you agree or disagree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had another good brother out of the jurisdiction of Illinois, Brother Bill Harlan. He said, masonry should be in you, not on you, right? And so,
Facts.
if I took this shirt off,
Mm,
if we took off the decals on our car, if we took off the hats and jackets, and any other paraphernalia that we wear, if we took those things off and masonry wasn't in us, then we would be naked.
mm,
And that's that's something that he taught. So it's one of those things where people should see masonry without seeing masonry, right? It shouldn't be
mm,
a thing where um okay, they see this shirt and they see that you're a mason, but are you actually showing by your actions what masonry is about? you know um because you are a walking advertisement,
mm-hmm.
is one of the things. And I'm sure you, Dr. Randall, you also being in a HBGLO, know one of the things that I learned when I cross is, like, you're no longer an individual. So they're
Yeah.
not
No,
going to say, "Oh, Damien does this." No, it's that group
no.
that does that, right?
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
when you go out there, it's not you, the individual, that does this. It's the group that does that. And it's a beautiful piece within a closing charge that's done within the jurisdiction of Arkansas, where it says that our organization will not be judged by our best leaders, but by our worst members.
Yeah,
So,
true statement.
when you think about that, when you walk out the door, how do you act? How do you walk and act as such? And you have to remember that, especially if you planning on wearing something to show that you have to be in constant, reminder that, somebody is watching, even when they're not, even when you don't think they're watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we always ask how the Masons act, right? In the chart, and the challenge section, they say by the square, right? And then we say, well, why by the square? Because it's emblem morality, or one of the working tools of our profession. Then I started to ask brothers, well, the square is an angle of 90 degrees. So if I add that up by four, right, four squares, and I get that circle, then I go to that dot within that circle, those two perpendicular lines. Now we're talking about that original conversation we just had, striving for that perfection, but not trying not to materially err. So
Hmm.
it's just funny that every this allegory, there's so much allegory in masonry, and we have to, just like you talked about, perfection having multiple definitions and words having multiple definitions, synonyms more or less, if you will. So it's just this funny. Trey, you have anything?
No, I'm listening in,
Well,
enjoying the conversation as normal. I don't have
okay.
anything at the very moment. I just think I'm resonating or marinating on what Brother Jack just said
Mm,
with regards to making good men better and how don't necessarily agree with that. I see that, and I definitely can agree with you on
mm,
that point because. You can't make someone do what they don't want to do, not to
no.
just repeat what you said, but it had me thinking about, all right, cool, so how does that relate, or how can I reflect on that and what I see in masonry, right, in regards to how I my expectation of masonry in general, and the people and the brothers in masonry. And it made me just really ponder on, is like, well, I can't expect anyone to be doing something if they don't know how to do that thing, right? And if the example that they have is not reflective of that deep self-reflection, then we are already on two different, we're going down two different paths. And I think that's going to segue us into this conversation about capitular masonry and the Royal Arch, in the sense of like, we are always constantly, brothers, in my opinion, at least I was like this initially, and still am to a degree, like, we're chasing, right? We're chasing the next thing in order to try to understand, without really just taking a pause and then and reflecting on, what is it, this thing that I'm doing, right? What is this opening and closing charge that I hear at Lodge? What does this really mean? And how do I apply this? Instead, I'm looking for the lost word. So I'm going here or going there and doing this, then the other. And there's comes a point where it's like, it's too much information at once. And I quickly realized, if I want to not be a parrot mason, if I really want to understand this craft, this beautiful craft, you got to slow down, right? You got to slow down and take it one step at a time. So that was what I was sitting here thinking about, listening to you gentlemen go, talking. So yeah.
Well, you asked about the lost word, and Damien, and I think it's either Under the Living Arch or the Mount Wings. When people want to join, I think it's under the Living Arch. When people want to join the Royal Arch Masons, the first thing we say, "Well, you want to get the lost word."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You want to get the lost word, right? But explain to these brothers, and I really want them to hear it from you, because they always hear it from me. Explain to these brothers about the second landmark and how pivotal that is to symbolic masonry and Royal Arch Masonry. You laugh because you know where it was going.
Yeah. So I have, when it comes to the second landmark and how we constantly violate it, and it's pretty much said that we constantly violate it. That goes to, again, like you said, understanding the etymology of words, understanding not doing things just by routine, asking the important question, why. And so the question that is there, what induced you, what
Mm,
influenced you, what brought you on this journey, you know what I'm saying,
right.
that I might obtain. Oh, okay, so you
Mm,
don't have it yet. Okay. All right. And so I asked the question, when it comes to traveling further, are you satisfied with being incomplete? And I
yeah.
let that impress upon their minds for a little bit. I said, are you satisfied with being incomplete? Because understanding, those who know understand, when you were raised in the midst of a tragedy,
Mm.
Correct. Yeah.
and you were raised in the midst of it. You didn't see the completion of your work. So, are you satisfied with being incomplete?
Yeah.
And so, I use that more of, a marketing tool than, the that which was lost, just because, is more to Holy Royal Arch Masonry than just obtaining that, right? that
Right.
is more of the that is more of the icing on the cake. But you're also there to see the completion. You
Mm,
also, there to understand that, you are forever a craftsman. You
Mm-hmm.
are
mm,
forever working in the quarries.
mm-hmm.
The work does not stop. You're always working, in the quarries in some form or fashion. There's beauty in understanding that, there will be a time where uh, you may be rejected because you're understood. You were misunderstood,
Mm-hmm.
but that rejection is your, projection to you becoming the center of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's so many, keys within there, to learn more than just, finding that, which was lost. I mean, it's it's a good point. Don't get me wrong, but I would beg the question, but okay, outside of that, what am I to, gain? When you see the completion, learn that there's the physical completion, but then there's also the spiritual completion. Just because the building is finished doesn't mean that it's complete.
Right.
What is it that makes you complete? So there's so many, things within that, Royal Arch Masonry to, to learn. We use this, the second landmark to understand that
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have what you have, you need to go get it. But there are those who, who don't understand that, even being able to, travel, work, and receive, were told that you could do that even
Yeah.
before you even get to that final degree, or even going as far to say, there's a piece as a master mason that you're charged to do. And as you go further in capitular masonry, what you were charged to do turns into an obligation. Now you're obligated to do it. So there's so many ways that that they link together and give an understanding. So when talking about capitular masonry, you can use the second landmark as a starting point, but I've gone as far as not making it the focal point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To
it's
give
definitely a starting point for sure.
yeah, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, having said that though, but you yourself through your books have left brothers breadcrumbs if they really are paying attention, especially in Mount Up with Wings. You talked about Enoch and the baluster and the nine vertical arches, and that was at
Right,
Mount
right,
Moriah, right? Which,
right.
as we think about Mount Moriah being in the northeast corner of Jerusalem, and then those nine vertical arches. Then I segue that to brothers when they start talking about these different things in masonry, because what we have in masonry right now is we're gang banging on masonry. So it's like the Crips versus the Bloods, right? I'm from LA, so the Crips versus the Bloods, and it's like which is better, so to speak, right? Brothers say, those brothers that are very symbolic lodge and Scottish Rite, and Scottish Rite is a college in masonry. But then I asked them this one question: well, how can you get a college degree without the prerequisites?
Hmm.
And they just kind of look at me. I said, well, York Rite Masonry is embedded in the Scottish Rite Masonry, especially specifically as we're talking about Enoch in the 13th degree, the Royal Arch of Enoch. And so I just want you to kind of talk through those nuances because brothers are really, I don't want to say confused, but influenced to go one way or another. Would you recommend one way or another to a new Master Mason?
Nah, I've never been a fan of that. Um, and the reason why I'm not a fan of that is because um, most people will give their personal experience and their personal opinion.
Mm,
A lot of times it's subjective and not objective.
right.
Um, some will say, well, come over here to York, right? Because I didn't learn anything over here in Scottish, right? Or, what's the phrase that I hear all the time? If it ain't York, it ain't right, or things of that nature. And I feel like, especially those who have climbed both sides of the ladder, and if they truly studied, and this is one of the many reasons why I say there's a very distinct difference between those who took the obligation and those who repeated the obligation. And I say that because if naturally and really took and understood the obligation that you were told to repeat, and you are a Scottish Rite Mason, you would never put one rite against the two, because you're
Mhm.
Yeah.
supposed to bring them together, right?
Yeah.
So, and then um, those who are astute and have studied would understand that Royal and Select actually stemmed from Scottish Rite. Those two degrees were known as side or detached degrees.
From one
Which
Stephen
stem,
Marin. Yes,
yeah.
sir.
So and really, the super excellent master was really not a degree, but it was more of a ceremony. So when you understand that, then you would take a different approach. I personally don't tell anyone that you should go this way or that way. I usually tell them, like, look, you're going to get the story told in two different ways, and it's going to put pieces of the puzzle together, right?
Mm,
So for example, we always talk about the word being lost. Okay, yeah, the word was lost, but somebody had it before it to be lost. And was it really lost? What is your definition of lost?
right.
For it to have been lost, it had to have been discovered. So you got to go one place to see where it was discovered, then go over here to see why it was lost. And then you hit them over in the head. When you tell them, well, we talk about the you know um, those who say, well, you only get the lost word, over here. Technically, you get the lost word over here too. And not only do you get the lost word over here, you're actually given permission to utter it. And then you find out that the word was lost again in
Facts.
order to be found again. So, again, it's, when it's about, again, having that understanding. So it's like, what is it that you are trying to, gain from going each way? Are you just satisfied with having a number behind your name? Because again, there's a reason why Scottish Rite is called the College of Freemasonry. For those of us who went to college, we know that there was more self-study time than there was class time.
Yeah.
So and you had to go get the books for yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
In fact, you
you
had to
know
purchase your own books.
right. You know what I mean? So
That
Yeah.
part. Yeah.
there's a reason why it's called the College of Freemasonry. So it's what is it that you really want to gain from it? And like you said, there is a lot of York Rite that is embedded in the Scottish Rite.
Hmm.
I tell anybody, like, you can become a Sir Knight of the Order of the Temple, on the York Rite, but you don't talk about Jacques de Molay till you get over to the Scottish Rite. So again, they complement each other. So again, it's where do you want to go? And then I never been a fan, and I'll tread lightly on this one, where you have those when they advertise which way to go.
Hmm.
You'll have one who'll say, well, the York Rite is more the way of the cross, and the Scottish Rite is more the philosophical. Well, there's each one of them is faith based in its own in its own right, and it deals with different things. Like masonry in itself teaches you toleration. You deal more with toleration on the Scottish Rite side, but just as over here, in the York Rite, you deal with the way across there as well, if you look deep, if deep enough. So yeah, I think when it's properly advertised, and I say that I say that a lot because there's a lot of false advertising when it comes to how masonry is promoted. So um, I I don't tell somebody. I'll tell somebody to follow their heart. When as far as they want to go, I'll give them some breadcrumb. This is a little bit of what you learn over here. It's a little bit what you learn over here. Which way. Hopefully, if you have the time, and the investment and the money to do so, I would say go both ways so that it completes the story. But depending on if you can only do one, I'll tell you, hey, this is what you'll get over here versus what you get over here. Then you make the decision for yourself.
Mm.
Yeah, Masonry is a beautiful story told backwards, right? And it's so cryptic, right? We have to go through a lot of different mazes, cryptic meaning all over the place. So we have to go to a lot of different mazes and phases just to understand what it really means. It's funny that you would mention the Scottish Rite with regards to Royal and Select, because I think it was around 1801 where Stephen Moran and that kind of split off because he brought those over to the United States via like the Dominican Republic and Haiti to the United States and to South Carolina. So it's just like people need to understand you got to know where you came from in order to know where you're going. So you
Right.
have to understand the bigger picture. I think we get kind of close minded and very narrow based on what we're doing and what we need to do, and then we get so consumed with I made 33rd degree Mason. I know a lot of Grand Inspectors Generals that don't know hardly anything about Mason. That's just what it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But when you become a Grand Inspector General, you're when you get that ducal crown, you are now a teacher. You're supposed to be a teacher in your
Mm-hmm.
symbolic lodge. But I tell brothers, you can't get to step 33 without going to step one.
Right.
And then we go right back to that Enoch conversation because that Mount Moriah piece and the baluster with the word found on the northeast corner of Jerusalem, just like you were as an entered apprentice, as a first step.
Mm-hmm.
But that first lesson was humility, taking off that left shoe.
Mm-hmm.
But we get so enamored with the numbers, like you said, the numbers behind your name. It doesn't make sense if you can't explain you're ineffective. We talked about this earlier. Like, would you want to kind of elaborate on that? Being effective. We got to go back to the etymology of these words, right? Being effective in what we are representing because we're representing truly something bigger than us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's all, I personally feel that in order for it, I think you have to have, again, going back to that level of understanding before anyone can go out and say, this is what masonry is, this is what masonry is about, right? Just to, and we was having this, I was having this conversation with some brothers not too long ago, actually a couple of days ago, talking about the effect of masonry on social media and how you have masons who just get raised and all of a sudden they become a spokesperson. I'm like, hey, you don't do that. You just got up, like you can't, like, you don't even know what happened. Like,
Yeah.
don't do that. So and then just becoming a poor representation of what the order is about. So I mean, it definitely takes a good amount of studying. I mean, and we were told this, as an apprentice, to in your leisure time to to study and find a seasoned brother who is just as willing to impart knowledge as you were willing to receive it. So if you're not doing that basic necessity, then then what are we really doing? And it again, it goes back to the parrot mason. One of the things, and it's always, I'm not gonna say always, but it's as I've studied, it's been kind of a pet peeve of mine. Um, whenever someone, let's just say, the three of us are in a conversation, and you know Trey says something that triggers me, and the next thing I know, I get upset, and we get into what is a new phrase that I heard that I use now. I don't use the word argument. I like to use intense fellowship. We get into an intense fellowship, right? And the next thing you know, someone says, hey, brother Jack, subdue your passion. Okay, first and foremost, do you even know what my passions are, right? Um, And if you don't know what my passions are, how can you tell me to subdue them? Now, while I understand the word passion is a strong, uncontrollable emotion, right? Why do we have a tendency to always use subdue your passion when everyone gets angry or upset?
Yeah.
Is that really what the term is used for? you know and so I talk about that. How I think sometimes we use use phrases for the sake of showing people that we know, right? And so instead of having, again, that word understanding of what of what it actually means, and putting it and using it in this proper context. Because if you was to say, well, what is my passion? Well, my passion is teaching. So now, and there's nothing wrong with the, passion. And I think we've gotten to a point where, saying subdue your passion has developed, in my opinion, somewhat of a negative connotation. But if you, understand it, with my passion being teaching, I know that if it comes to the point where it affects my household in some type of way, then I need to subdue it. Then I need to put it back in this circle. So it's like, I teach people, first of all, before we talk about you subduing your passions, what are your passions? What do you have a passion for? Do you even know what those passions are? And then once you figure out what your passions are, do you know what your limit is?
Yeah.
Do you know your limit when it comes to those passions where you're not, stepping outside of yourself, right? And then once you figure out what that limit is, then do you draw a circle around that limit so that you don't step outside of the circle? That's how you subdue your passion, right? But to just use as a, subdue your passion because we get into an intense fellowship, that's not, so it's those things. And again, developing an understanding of what it is we're saying, what it is we're doing, and what it means to us.
I have a question for both of you gentlemen, and Damien, appreciate that. That was a lot to digest on that. So as new brothers come in and they're seeking more light and seeking to educate themselves, typically we'll go to any book, or we'll do a little bit of light research, and you can quickly find yourself going down these rabbit holes of stories of truths, right? Truths, half truths, whole truths, and you can get very, very frustrated. But what I'm figuring out, and I'd like to hear y'all's opinion on this. Should brothers give more credence to the story and the ritual work and these tools and these lessons that we're supposed to be garnering from these things, vice worrying about the not the entomology, but the history, the exact history, how something came to be?
I'll let Damien go. I'll just say this before he goes. It's just knowledge of self, just like Socrates said. Like you have to know your why. And I've told you this before. If your why is so strong and so definitive, like Dr. Thomas says, right? You gotta want to succeed more than you want to breathe. And that has
Yeah.
to be an internal thing. That's a you thing. If you're easily influenced, then you get into some rough roads. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll digress there and come back to it. Go ahead, D.
I don't know if you want to ask me about rabbit holes because I am an
He is the
avid
king of rabbit
I
holes.
am an
Let's
avid
do it.
I am an avid hole digger. you know,
He's a rabbit.
listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I usually I'll ask a person, hey, um, you sure you want to go down this hole? Because it's gonna get deep. So and when you go down one, you can't help but go down a few more. But I feel I agree with Dr. Randall. It truly depends on the person. When it comes to new brothers, I think the first thing that I would tell them is just because it's in a book doesn't make it true.
Mm.
Be mindful of who you are taking information from, because sometimes the information that you think is so pertinent is really just a person's opinion. you know so I would look at, I go to, like, I think I'm still a member of the book club for the Scottish Rite for the Mother Supreme Council. So I look at some of the books that they come out with, and then with me and a small group of brothers, we go back and forth on what books we have, what we should get, and things like that. And for those who are avid readers, I would tell you quickly build a budget. Have a budget for books because if you're an avid reader, you will be broke. Getting some books, but one step at a time. When it comes to story, I would tell people please remember that a good portion of the story is legend, and they call it legend for a reason.
Yep.
Sometimes we try to make a logic out of parts that's not true in the first place. It was just put together to to teach a lesson.
Yeah.
um but even the historical part is important. I would say you should how would I say it? Sometimes I feel like there are brothers who need a Masonic and what I mean by that is, if you remember the old VA commercial, yeah, where they leaning and they need some balance. Because I think part of the historical part is important. Now, do I think that you should be a historian? No, I mean whatever fits whatever your niche is. Certain people's niches um, ritual. Certain people's niche is history. Certain people's niche is administrative. Running a business. I mean, that's everybody has their niche, but I do think that everyone should have a balance. We've been learning about balance since the first degree, right? So, everybody should have a balance. It's good to understand the process that you went through to become, but it's also good to understand the history. Why would you not know or want to know the history of your lodge? Why would you not want to know the history of your grand lodge? Why does your lodge have the name that it
Yeah.
has? Like, who are some important people that came from your lodge? Whose shoulders do you stand on? So I think that's equally important. So I think you should have a healthy balance, between the two. But whatever your niche is, definitely focus on that niche. But you should be able to walk into a room and be able to have certain conversations in every facet of masonry, and that's just my opinion on that.
Well, I think history is his story. Just like you said, everything that's written is not true. History is his story, and we can. I'm not gonna get into the rabbit hole with the Bible, just because that is deep, and we talk about it being written in Hebrew. And I've said this: Hebrews read from right to left, and then conversely, our English version, Greek version is read from left to right. So the literal interpretation changes. So we have to be careful sometimes with what is written, and we just have to see things for what they really are
Mm-hmm.
at times. And as you talk about history and understanding it and embracing it. Like, I am so blessed as an individual to be the first right image grand commander in my commandery ever. And I
Hmm.
just found this out.
Wow.
I
Wow.
didn't, I hadn't, and they've been around since 1921, I believe.
Wow.
And so when you look at stuff like that, you have, as a historian, if we're going to use that word, you have a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a responsibility to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And sometimes the truth is not popular, especially in
Right.
masonry. People don't want to hear what it
Ooh.
really is. People don't want to hear what it really is. They want to
Yeah.
hear this fantasy, this fallacy of what they have perceived it to be, whatever it is.
Right.
But the truth ain't
Right.
popular.
That's true. That
So
is very true.
yeah, man, it's a lot, man. It's a lot to digest. But go ahead, Trey, because I know you're gonna go down a couple more rabbit holes when
Look,
we get out of here.
look, I you know me in these rabbit holes too.
Go ahead, man.
I'm just
You
no
got the
man.
digger right here.
I'm just reflecting. I'm reflecting on everything, and it's kind of making me think about, this thing called craft masonry, and
Right.
how unending, for lack of a better term, it is, and what you can learn from it and from others. I think it does kind of answer. It does answer, the question, because I know that I think that the why I asked the question about history and whatnot is because I think a lot of brothers do that. Like, that's the first thing that I do. I question a lot of things. I question, in our last episode, I questioned, Dr. Mackey in the sense of, the 25 landmarks, and, where that authority came from with regards to, aggregating these, and then how do you chase down where these landmarks came from? It's just an intriguing story, but I think more so than that, it is the lessons learned through these rituals. Every time I go back through and read a ritual, it's it's kind of it's kind of like starting over every time. It's kind of like starting over every time, I pick up another nugget there, here and there. But hey, I do have because y'all mentioned some things, and I think some of the brothers out there would like to know, and I'm definitely curious. So, when you're talking about books and things of that nature, would you recommend, your lodges starting a book club, or what does that look like? What have you seen some good things, some good practices out there with regards to lodge education? Really, for you, Brother Damien, yeah, what have you seen?
Uh, it's not much what I've seen. It's more of what I've heard, and I say that because as you know, as I've said myself, and Dr. Randall said, I'm an avid rabbit hole digger. So because of that, everybody is not where I am as far
Yeah.
as what I learned and what I like to learn. And let me just say, and let me put it out there, that does not mean that I'm better than anybody on the by any means, but I do have a phrase where I say we meet on the level, but we're not on the same level, right? So I'm an advocate of Ecclesiastes 1:18. With much wisdom comes much grief. He that increaseth in knowledge increaseth in sorrow. And for a good portion of time, it took me some time to really understand that passage of scripture, and I understand it now. Is because as you, especially those who go down the path of esotericism, you realize that once your eyes are open to something, you can't unsee it. You can't
Hmm.
unlearn it. You know what I'm saying? It's there. So as you continue down that path and as you continue to learn things and open your mind to different things, your mind, your spirit to different things and go down different paths, you realize that not everybody is going to be able to go down that path with you, nor are they ready to go down that path with you. So a lot of times the grief and the sorrow comes from the fact that you can't share that with everybody, right?
Yeah.
Because not everybody's ready to receive it. So there's not too many conversations that I have on a certain level. It's refreshing when I do, but I don't always, because I know, there's certain people that just not there yet. If they ever get there, they may not ever get there, right? So, but I have heard of those who would, try to do a book club. They may get, certain books like The Craft and the Symbols, things of that nature to, just to get your feet wet and, and learn. So, there's certain books out there that I would say, you can grab and, get a few brothers who are willing to learn and talk about it and learn about it. One book, one of the things that my grandmaster have had me done for the past 2 years is I do a literature review where what I do is I take, different books and I do an overview of the book, and then I show how that book ties into the lessons and principles of masonry, just to give you an outside, perspective of how you could take other books and tie it into what we've learned in literature. So I think one of the favorite books that I did is it true what they said about Freemasonry, which is by S. Brent Morris and Arturo de Hoyos, and that book talks to the different periods of rumors and lies and propaganda that's told by Freemasonry, from the anti-Masonic movement to the Leo Taxel hoax and things of that nature. Dispel certain rumors, that are still out there when it comes to masonry. So I, use that book just to go over certain things. So get you those who are committed, who had the commitment to want to read, to want to learn. And also understand it may not be in your lodge. You may pull some people from, district. You may pull some people from, jurisdiction. Like they may not be close at hand, they may not be in arm's reach, but if you find that, when you find that small group of people that's willing to, that's willing to learn with you, it'll be a good thing. So, I would definitely say sometimes you have to reach outside of the lodge, and, reach to like your district and things of that nature to, to have that camaraderie and that fellowship. So
Yeah, that's definitely appreciate that. I
Valid
think
points.
I think I'm. Some of us are fortunate to have connections with people, and it's tough to find those people, especially if you're not out and traveling. I think what you all do on the Prince Hall think tank. I know when I was coming through, is as though they told us not to. I was like, hey, look, I'm listening. I'm going to listen to these guys. I didn't know half the stuff that y'all were talking about, but it was good in the sense of like now looking back and reflected, I could see that is what you're just talking about, right? Finding those brothers who have that passion, who are dedicated. They might not be within your lodge. That's a great point. I think I'm fortunate enough to have Dr. Raul that I always bug him, left and right. And then what he's doing with the educational series on the York Rite is really just, I think, a great thing for Masonry in general, and exposing a lot of brothers to knowledge and individuals that they normally wouldn't have a conversation with. I mean, there's people on there from all over the country, and that was an experience. That is an experience itself, to sit in that and kind of see everyone there and learning. And then you quickly realize that, to your point early on, is that it's about making good men better. It's like, hey, you have to study for yourself, right? You have to. It's your own experience, so it doesn't matter what house you go to, who you talk to, still does not absolve you of your responsibility if you are truly seeking light to study. But you also said a good thing too, as well, as far as like everything that you read isn't the truth. And there's so much literature out there. I'd never thought about, a literature review. Obviously we do that in school and whatnot, but that's a great way to find out really quickly if something is worth having a discussion about. So definitely appreciate that insight. Hopefully the
absolutely,
brothers out there listening.
Yeah,
absolutely.
no,
And I mean,
we
you look at, certain, I say if you look at certain, even when you're looking for books, if you look at, certain authors,
Mm-hmm.
George Steinmetz or H.L. Haywood, or again Arturo de Hoyos, S. Brett Morris, Albert Mackey, Walter Wilmhurst, things of, authors like that. There are a lot of, people who will go to some, they would consider some go-tos, and I would, you know, we have to talk about that. You know what I mean? Let's have a discussion before we go there. But when you look at authors like that who break down certain aspects of masonry, or another one I forgot, I got to mention his name, Robert G. Davis. When you look at all authors like that, that you're really getting something, from brothers like that. So
Yeah.
no, I all true, all true. And as I've gotten older, I've become more of an avid reader. I think one of the you mentioned the Crafting the Symbols. That's the first book I ever got in masonry, and I was always told by my senior deacon that that's the first book besides the dictionary. That's the first book that brothers should get. And then I was
hmm
fortunate enough to read Born in Blood, and it really opened my eyes to a different how vast masonry is. But we will have many follow on conversations, but we were going to be very respectful of your time because I know you work nights. So I just humbly want to thank you. You should receive a book in the mail at some time real
yes,
soon
sir.
here. There'll be another surprise coming for you. And just love to get your, always your feedback and opinion on it. But it'll be coming out soon, and we'll go from there, Charles Smith and myself. But we
Absolutely,
appreciate
and
you being on, brother. We really do.
absolutely,
We do.
thank you, obviously, for for the opportunity. Keep doing big things. Definitely proud of the things that you're doing and everything that you're accomplishing. Congratulations on making history.
Yes, sir.
There's a quote that I like to use, since we will segue, and tomorrow we celebrate the legacy of a great man, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther
Your
King
frat
Jr.,
brother.
who said absolutely, but he said that we are not makers of history, we are made by history, right?
Yeah.
And so, for a time, I couldn't understand that, but what I'm saying, now you are in the annals of history,
Yeah.
because of the fact that you were nominated, elected, and installed as a right eminent grand commander of your
Yes, sir.
jurisdiction, and what I'm saying, that puts you into, you're made by that. So,
Yes, sir.
congratulations on being made by history. So,
Yes, sir.
like I said, keep doing great things, and looking forward to even greater things from you.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
And we'll definitely talk to you soon, man. We appreciate you again, brother. Safe travels, and yeah, be safe tonight.
last
Absolutely.
thing, Sergeant. Last thing, just for our listeners out there, we can get your books on Amazon and also at the book patch, right? And
Yes.
that is Masonic1906 at gmail.com for that
Yes.
list of books, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then I think for the brothers out there, we're going to try to put together these couple of the books that we talked about, put it in the description, so the brothers can follow along too. So, Brother Jack, thank you, sir.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
Yes, sir.
much.
All right, brother, man. Be easy now.
Yes, sir.